You think you control your choices. But what if most of your decisions weren't really yours? This isn't a guide on manipulation tricks, it's a revelation. Because behind every compelling offer, every sudden urge, every logical decision you think you make, there are invisible forces shaping your mind. Silently, subtly, and often without mercy. Most people never notice, they just follow the currents. But you're about to see the machinery behind the curtain. This is stealth control. Are you being subtly manipulated? A map of hidden triggers, micro-behaviors, and emotional nudges designed to guide your thoughts before you even realize it. A guide to the difference between influence that serves you and influence that steals your freedom. If you've ever wondered why you sometimes act against your own interests, why a feeling grips you before you can reason, why small favors or harmless words leave you trapped in decisions you didn't intend, you're not failing. You're responding to psychological architecture built to bypass your conscious mind. The moment you see the invisible patterns, you gain your freedom. This video isn't about teaching you to control others. It's about teaching you to protect yourself. The awareness, the mental armor, the insight to recognize influence before it takes root. So before we dive in, ask yourself this: what unseen hand is guiding me? By the end, your answer will be clear. Now I finally see. Welcome to the hidden currents of influence. Let's step inside. Chapter 1. The Unseen Hand. How manipulation operates invisibly. They do not push, they nudge. They do not shout. They whisper the single phrase that tilts a life. You will not notice because the trick is to be invisible. Most of us imagine manipulation as a dramatic theft. A loud argument, a clear lie, a divide and conquer. In reality, the art of influence prefers small, patient hands. It lives in the pauses between words, in the light touch on the arm, in the half-remembered joke that arrives at the right moment. These are micro-behaviors and subtle cues, designed not to force a choice, but to make one feel natural. That is why victims rarely name it when they are inside it. Everything feels like their own thought. The beauty of hidden influence is its gentleness. It does not announce itself. It arranges circumstances so that your mind finishes the rest. Imagine a friend who always knows just what to say when you are unsure, or a manager who smiles while steering the team toward a choice you didn't know you had. Think of the cashier who places a small extra item near the register, or the charity that asks for a tiny first yes before requesting more. Each scene shows the same pattern, an invitation to comply wrapped in everyday normality. The moment you accept, a quiet loop begins. Your brain rewards the easy decision with a whisper of pleasure, a chemical pat on the back that says this was the right choice. That feeling makes you more likely to repeat the behavior, and the influence grows without fanfare. There is also a neural truth beneath the theater. Our brains evolved to conserve energy and to follow patterns. Automatic compliance is not moral failure. It is a survival shortcut. Mirror neurons. Copy what others do. Oxytocin smooths social bonds, and uncertainty leaves a space that another person can fill. Manipulators exploit these systems, not by breaking them, but by arranging gentle conditions where those systems do what they always do. The result is a relationship built on momentum, rather than consent, on rhythm rather than reasoning. You can find hidden influence in the quiet places. In the home where compliments are strategically placed to soften resistance. In the workplace where praise is used to steer loyalty. In relationships where unpredictability is met with intense reward. Notice how language can soften command into suggestion, how proximity can transform indifference into trust, how timing turns a request into an opportunity. None of this requires elaborate plots. It asks only for attention and patience. If the first step toward protection is seeing, then learn to watch for rhythm and pattern, not just lies. Learn to question ease. When a choice feels too natural, pause and ask whose ease it serves. The world will still offer you kindness and warmth, but you will begin to tell the kind from the clever. Practice saying no to small nudges. Each refusal is a muscle that grows confidence and clarity daily. Chapter 2. The Velistra Triangle of Covert Control. They catch your eye, then your breath, then your heart. By the time you notice, you are already leaning closer. The Velistra Triangle is simple and terrible. Attention, emotion, dependency. Each point alone can influence you. Together they form a quiet architecture of control. First, attention is taken like a small theft. A gaze, a headline, a private message. Something pulls your focus away from the world and toward a person or idea. Attention is currency. When you spend it, you surrender parts of your inner life. The second point, emotion, is where influence becomes intimate. With a few well-timed words, a tone, or a sudden kindness, the heart tilts and remembers that person before the mind does. Feeling fills the gap attention makes. The third point is dependency. Once your attention and your feelings are guided, someone can offer themselves as the solution to the hunger they helped create. Dependency is slow work. It arrives as convenience, as comfort, as the easy place to land. Together, the 3 points make a shape that traps without force. Manipulators do not invent these steps, they follow them. They gather your attention with novelty or charm, shift your feelings with contrast and reward, and then offer themselves as the steady point you need. They are architects of rhythm. They know when to be bright and surprising, and when to be the quiet presence you return to. The pattern creates a loop. Attention invites emotion, emotion deepens attachment, attachment breeds dependence, and dependence ensures the loop continues. Once the triangle is set, control moves by momentum rather than by argument. You see the Velistra Triangle everywhere if you look. Friendships that begin with obsessive interest and then demand constant reassurance. Social feeds that flood you with addictive content and then sell authenticity through curated vulnerability. Relationships where intense affection alternates with boredom to keep you chasing highs. At work, leaders gather attention through praise, trigger emotion with recognition, and then create dependency with exclusive access or favors. Each scene follows the same fragile geometry. Someone draws you in, stirs you, and then places themselves where you need them to be. The antidote is not only awareness, but small, steady acts. Notice who holds your focus and why. Ask whether your feelings belong to the moment or someone shaping the moment. Test the ground by refusing tiny offers of comfort and seeing if the world continues. Build sources of stability that belong to you. Rituals, friendships, crafts that do not require another's permission. Dependency loses power when you widen your supports. Not every attentional pull is a trap, and not every emotion that touches you is deceit. People can be kind without cunning. The Velistra Triangle is a map, not a moral claim. It helps you see patterns so you can choose. When you begin to see the angles, the gentle hands pulling become less mysterious. You regain a simple freedom to look up, look away, and decide for yourself. Practice small refusals, name patterns aloud, keep a private journal, and check in with friends who see you whole. These little habits sharpen judgment and return small pieces of life that subtle influence wants to borrow. Choose your attention as if it were sacred. Chapter 3. The Gray Zone. Ethical Persuasion versus Covert Manipulation. They dress coercion in kindness and call it care. The grayest moves hide behind good manners. We live inside a world that depends on influence. Parents guide children, teachers shape minds, leaders inspire teams, and friends nudge one another toward better choices. Influence can heal, teach, and protect. But there is a thin place where influence becomes exploitation, where a helpful hand becomes a leash. The difference is often small enough that you may feel it before you name it. A quiet shrinking, a repeated small surrender, a private doubt that grows like mildew in a warm room. That is the gray zone. An in-between where intention and harm blur, and you must learn to notice the soft steps that close off your freedom. Ethical persuasion asks for consent. It offers reasons and leaves room for no. It respects time, privacy, and dignity. Covert manipulation hides or distorts motives. It shortens the path to compliance with tricks that feel natural. The signs are subtle. You may find yourself apologizing more, agreeing faster, or seeking approval in places you used to stand alone. You might notice tasks appearing on your plate that once did not belong to you, or a slow widening of obligations tied to someone else's presence. Good intentions are a tricky shield. Someone can believe they act for your good while still using methods that push past your boundaries. They may tell a story about helping you grow while steering you toward dependence. They may insist that discomfort is for your own good, while timing it to break resistance. Intent and effect are not the same. A kindly face does not guarantee moral hands. That is why you must learn to look at outcomes as well as words. Does the interaction leave you more whole or more fragmented? Do you feel lighter or silently bound? Track what happens to your sense of choice after repeated interactions. Boundaries in the gray zone are porous. A question asked too many times becomes pressure. A compliment tied to a request becomes a debt. A sudden crisis that asks for urgent help can be a lever if it happens too often. Watch for patterns that repeat with gentle persistence. Name them. Saying no once is practice. Saying no often becomes language you can use without guilt. Keep a private ledger of moments that felt off. Not as proof to punish, but as data to see whether influence is proportional and fair. Repair often begins with clarity. Speak your limits plainly. Ask about motives when requests feel personal. Test kindness by offering to reciprocate on equal terms. Seek perspectives from friends outside the pattern. Most people are not villains. Many are clumsy, fearful, or selfish without malice, but good intentions do not replace consent. When you protect the borders of your life, you do not close off generosity, you make it meaningful. In the gray zone, moral work is not to stop influence entirely, but to choose it. Instead, learn to choose when to let influence in. Let it arrive with transparency, mutual respect, and the option to walk away. These are the simple rules of humane persuasion. Chapter 4. Camouflaged words. Linguistic techniques that shape your mind. A sentence can be a gentle trap. The softest phrase often does the deepest work, because words dress the doorway your mind walks through. Language is not only a tool for sharing facts. It is a quiet engineer of feeling and choice. We think words describe reality, but often they shape it. A casual suggestion can slip past your conscious guard and sit like a seed in the soil of attention, then sprout preferences that feel like your own. This is not magic. It is pattern. Certain sounds, rhythms, and choices of phrasing trigger memories, lower resistance, and invite compliance. People who study influence learn to weave these patterns into ordinary speech, so that persuasion lives inside everyday talk, and not in a speech bubble marked. Try this on. Consider how a question can become a guide. A direct order meets the mind's defenses. A well-placed question asks your brain to complete the thought, and in that completion you do the persuader's work. Or notice how certainty in tone can shortcut doubt. When someone speaks as if an outcome is already true, your mind often aligns with that certainty, because your brain favors coherence. It prefers a story that fits. Ambiguity works too, but in the opposite way. Vague words let you fill the blanks with your hopes or fears, and the person who planted the blank watches you complete their idea. Emotional priming is another trick. A single descriptive word spoken at the right moment can color your memories and choices for minutes or hours. Used together, these moves form a soft architecture of influence. There are subtler tools still. Embedded suggestions place an idea inside a longer sentence, so the conscious mind notices the whole and misses the small push. Framing sets the stage. Call something a gift and it feels different than a favor, even if nothing else changes. Euphemism can make harm sound humane. Flattery can close resistance by honoring the self, then slipping in a request. Conversational pacing, slowing, speeding, pausing, guides attention and can create a sense of intimacy that makes a later ask land more easily. None of these are inherently evil. Teachers, therapists, and parents use them to help. The problem arises when the aim is control, not care. How does language bypass conscious resistance? It borrows the mind's shortcuts. Our brains are wired to fill gaps, to mirror tone, to trust familiar patterns. A persuasive phrase rides those currents. That is why training your ear matters. Notice when phrases make you feel a sudden certainty, or when a compliment comes bundled with a request. Keep an inner pause, a practice of waiting 3 breaths before you respond when someone presses your attention. Ask simple, clarifying questions. What do you mean by that? Or why do you think that helps me? Questions force the speaker into clarity and reduce the power of ambiguity. Practicing small refusals to linguistic nudges builds strength. Name the technique gently when you see it. That sounds like an invitation rather than a plan. Share your reactions with a trusted friend. Write down phrases that felt off and note what followed. Language loses much of its power when exposed to light and named. Most people are not malicious. Many are unaware of the patterns they repeat, but words are skilled at being kind and sharp at the same time. Learn the grammar of influence, and you will begin to choose which sentences enter your life. Chapter 5. Emotional hijacking. Using feelings to gain control. A feeling can be a slow thief. It asks for shelter and then refuses to leave until the world rearranges around its claim. Emotions are not just private weather. They are tools that shape how we decide and who we trust. When someone understands your moods, they can move through them like a sailor reading currents. Subtle guilt arrives as a soft clasp on the chest, a reminder you should have done more, given more, forgiven more. Quiet intimidation does not roar. It narrows the room with a look or a suggestion that you are asking too much. Engineered vulnerability is the deliberate showing of wounds at the right time, so you will be the one to offer comfort, loyalty, or silence. These moves are not accidents. They are rhythms designed to steer your choices by changing how you feel before you choose. Mood shifting is an art that borrows from timing and contrast. A storm of charm followed by a cold silence makes warmth feel precious. Small kindness after pressure makes the pressure seem fair. When someone alternates reward and withdrawal, your brain starts to chase the reward like a trained animal. The small highs become proof that the relationship matters, and you forgive the lows because the highs tell you to. This is the engine behind many emotional traps. Inconsistent reward teaches dependence. The more you seek the return to warmth, the more likely you are to tolerate behavior you would otherwise reject. There is a psychology under these tactics. Our minds prefer coherence and safety. Emotions signal value. Fear says flee, joy says stay, shame says repair. Manipulators learn to trigger these signals and then offer the solution that only they can provide. They may create small crises or highlight your insecurities, then step in as the fixer. They borrow your pain to anchor themselves in your life. Because such techniques work on instinct, they often bypass reason. You can list objections and still find yourself acting as if none apply, simply because your emotional system has been activated in a particular way. Recognizing an emotional trap begins with noticing the pattern of feeling rather than isolated incidents. Ask yourself, after many encounters, do I feel smaller, more anxious, or unusually responsible for another's mood? Do moments of praise come with expectations attached? Does kindness often arrive with a cost? When emotion becomes the currency of control, your choices start to pay that cost without your full consent. Keep a private record of feelings and what preceded them. Over time, patterns reveal themselves in plain language. Repair and resistance are possible and often gentle. Learn to name your feelings aloud to yourself. Saying, "I feel guilty" or "I feel pressured" takes those states out of the private dark and places them in observation, where they lose some of their force. Create short rituals when you feel hijacked. Step outside, count breaths, text a friend, delay major decisions by 24 hours. Strengthen supports that are not tied to the person who triggers you. Hobbies, communities, steady routines. Practice returning a favor with a boundary. "I can help, but only on these terms." Each small refusal rebuilds autonomy. Emotions are not enemies, they are signals. The harm starts when someone designs those signals to serve their end. Learn the grammar of your feelings, and you will be less likely to respond to someone else's script. In that clarity, you reclaim the right to feel and to choose on your own terms. Chapter 6. Invisible Pressure, Social Manipulation. You don't notice. They make you feel like the odd one, out before you even speak. The quiet weight of a room can be heavier than any argument. We imagine peer pressure as loud, dares, taunts, public shaming, but much of it is soft and almost invisible. Micro-peer pressure is the gentle current that pulls behavior toward a local norm. The laugh that follows a joke you did not find funny. The unanimous nod while you hesitate. The small changes you make until your preference feels abnormal. These signals guide choices by telling your brain what most people do. Humans are social animals. Our minds are built to fit. That wiring kept groups safe long ago, but today it can steer us without our notice. Authority mimicry works the same way. You do not need a badge to feel obligated. Tone, posture, and steady language can create the illusion of rank. A calm, certain voice frames facts as settled, and people follow because clarity is easier than conflict. Anchoring is a related trick. Introduce a number, example or standard early, and later judgments bend to that first mark. Once an anchor is set, everything that follows feels measured against it. Presence is another soft force, someone who occupies space calmly. Arriving early, speaking slowly, listening while others hurry, creates a magnetic field of influence. Tone and pacing act like social glue. A slow, composed speaker reduces tension and increases compliance because urgency triggers defensive thinking while steadiness invites trust. Manipulators use this. They slow down to lull resistance, speed up to flush decisions, and return to calm to seal agreement. You can resist by training attention. Notice how rooms make you feel and when suggestions arrive. Watch for patterns, the same person who steers conversations, the repeated example that becomes the standard, the timing of requests that follow group agreement. Practice a small pause before you agree. Ask a clarifying question. Who else agrees? Or can we wait a day? These simple moves break momentum and create space to think. Tiny acts build strength. Offer a different opinion once in a while without over-explaining. Choose where you sit. Laugh when you truly mean it. Keep a private note of moments that felt pressured. Patterns become clear on paper. Speak at your natural pace even when others rush. Each small divergence trains your mind to resist the pull to conform. This is not a call to withdraw from social life. Groups help us survive and prosper. Norms guide cooperation. The point is choice. Learn to see invisible pressure, and you will keep kindness without losing your center. Let presence be a source of power you hold, not a force someone borrows from you. Be gentle as you practice. Resistance is a muscle that grows with daily choices. Over time, rooms will feel lighter, conversations clearer, and you will know when to step toward others or step back on your own terms. Chapter 7. Environmental Manipulation. How your surroundings influence you. The room is speaking before you open your mouth. Light, sound, and layout whisper what you should do next. Spaces are not neutral. They are designed messages that shape mood, attention, and choice long before a single word is said. Walk into a store and you are guided by more than signs. The angle of the aisle, the scent in the air, the music's tempo, all tuned to slow your steps and speed your spending. Sit in an office, and the ceiling height, the placement of chairs, the view from the window, even the distance between desks quietly tell you how to behave. These elements do not force you, they nudge, like a floor that gently tilts toward a door. When someone arranges a space with intent, they arrange your decisions. Lighting is a patient sculptor of feeling. Bright, cold light sharpens attention and speeds action. Warm, dim light invites lingering and softens judgment. Sound sets pace. Fast music makes us move quicker. Quiet ambient sound invites thought. Spatial design creates paths and barriers. A narrow corridor funnels choices. A circular seating area suggests equality and conversation. Designers borrow lessons from psychology and biology. Humans prefer ease, familiar patterns, and sensory comfort. Marketers and planners use those preferences as levers. The result is a choreography where your body follows a path someone else has drawn. Public spaces carry their own persuasive grammar. A park with clear sight lines and open benches invites sociability and safety. A waiting room with thin magazines and uncomfortable chairs encourages impatience and compliance. In offices, glass walls can signal transparency or surveillance, depending on how they are used. The subtle framing of a place, what is kept visible and what is hidden, shapes the stories people tell about themselves while they are inside it. Environments can encourage generosity, hurry, trust, caution, or submission, often without any explicit instruction. The digital world borrows the same tricks and multiplies them. Online, layout is code, and code is power. Home pages are curated paths. Notification sounds are tiny tugs on attention. Infinite feeds are architectures of habit. Algorithms learn what keeps you scrolling and then feed you more of it. Colors, button shapes, and timed pop-ups are designed to reduce friction between seeing and clicking. In this way, virtual spaces become skilled persuaders. They lower the cost of action and raise the cost of stepping away. Recognizing environmental influence begins with small observations. Notice how you move through a place and how your feelings change. Pay attention to what keeps you longer than you planned or makes you decide faster than you intended. Try altering your surroundings deliberately. Change a lamp, rearrange a chair, silence notifications for an hour. See how choices shift. These simple experiments reveal the quiet language of space. You do not have to leave modern life to regain agency. Use design to support your values. Create corners for calm, set clear digital boundaries. Choose shops and spaces that respect your rhythm. When you shape where you live and work, you reclaim the first line of defense against subtle influence. Environments will always speak. Learn to listen and to answer on your terms. Chapter 8. Algorithmic Manipulation. When technology knows you better than you do. A mirror that learns your face and then nudges you toward a life you did not plan. Machines watch, predict, and quietly rearrange what you see until your choices feel like your own. We no longer walk into stores blind. We wander through streams of curated content that have been tuned to the shape of our attention. Algorithms do not persuade with speeches. They persuade with patterns. They notice what you linger on, what makes you pause, and what you ignore. Then they show you more of the same, a little different, or slightly more urgent, testing how you respond and adjusting like a nervous hand on the thermostat. Over time, those tiny adjustments add up. Your feed becomes a companion that understands your moods, your fears, and your curiosities, and then it begins to suggest what would keep you there longest. Personalization can be useful. A helpful recommendation can save time or reveal something beautiful. The quiet danger is when personalization becomes prediction. Predictive models do not simply reflect preference. They anticipate behavior and shape it. When a system predicts that you will click, buy, or share, it arranges the world to make that prediction even more likely. That feedback loop hides its work behind convenience. You think the choice was easy. The system knows it nudged the path first. Social platforms are built on attention. Every notification, every color choice, every autoplay decision is designed to reduce friction between curiosity and action. Designers test variations not to offend, but to learn which tiny changes make you stay. These experiments are often invisible, running in the background as A/B tests. A single change in wording, a different image, a shifted button, each can alter behavior in ways that pile up into large effects. The tools are neutral. The outcomes depend on the aims behind them. When the aim is profit or engagement above user well-being, the architecture can steer people toward extremes, toward quick rage, toward constant comparison, because those states generate time and clicks. There is also the political and social cost. Algorithms amplify patterns, and patterns can echo loudest when they confirm what you already believe. When similar voices cluster, you can end up inside an enclosed world where disagreement feels foreign. That is not only lonely, it narrows attention and can harden choices into habits that feel inevitable. Influence becomes structural, not personal. Systems design the options that feel available, and we adapt to them. Regaining some control is possible through simple steps. Notice what platform designs make you feel hurried or thin. Turn off autoplay. Limit notifications. Seek alternative sources that challenge what your feed shows you. Create friction. Delay big purchases or emotional replies by a day. Use the same tools, but with small, intentional pauses that interrupt the machine's smooth nudges. Teach friends and family what you learn. Social habits change faster when shared. Remember that algorithms are tools made by people. They reflect values and incentives. When you name the patterns, the power they hold becomes less mysterious. You can still enjoy technology's help while insisting it serve you, not the other way around. Learn to treat your attention like a scarce good and your choices like a garden that needs careful tending. In that care, you will find breathing room between a suggestion and your yes. Chapter 9. Text-based influence. Manipulation in chats, DMs, and comments. A message can arrive like a soft hand on your shoulder and feel like fate. Tiny lines of text can tilt your mood, your judgment, even your sense of self, long before you see the person behind the screen. Text is a strange language of half voices. Without face, tone, or touch, we fill the gaps with story. That uncertainty is fertile ground for influence. A single, well-timed message can create urgency when none existed, or it can make you feel guilty for a silence you did not owe. The rhythm of typing dots, the pause between read and reply, the choice to send one short sentence instead of a paragraph. Each of these small moves carries weight. People learn to use these small weights like levers. A delayed reply becomes leverage. It can punish, reward, or invite pursuit. Read receipts are a tiny mirror that reflects your responsiveness back at you, and some will use that mirror to shape behavior. When someone sees that you read but did not reply, they can nudge you with a second message that sounds casual and suddenly feels urgent. That second message is not innocent. It tests your boundaries. Tone in text is a ghost. Phrases that would land as mild in voice can feel sharp on screen. Words like sure, fine, or if you want can be soft commands dressed as options. Phrasing matters. A question can become a suggestion, a compliment can be bait for a favor, and a confession can be a trap that asks you to reciprocate with intimacy or loyalty. Micro-messaging exploits the mind's craving for connection. Short, effective notes like miss you or are you okay open doors because we want to be seen as caring. Once the door is open, requests can follow that feel reasonable in the heat of the moment. Timing is a quiet weapon. Messages sent late at night, in mornings, or during moments of stress land differently. A text that arrives when you are tired or alone is more likely to move you. That is why some influenciers wait for your weak hours. They know your defenses are lower then. The cadence of messages, speeding up to create pressure, slowing down to suggest withdrawal, shapes expectation. Rapid follow-ups create a sense of emergency. Long silences create longing. Both can be used to tilt choice. Recognition of these tactics starts with small habits. Turn off read receipts when you need space. Delay replies intentionally to test whether a message demands you or simply wants a reaction. Read a suspicious message twice before answering, and ask yourself what need it tries to meet. Name the feeling a message produces. This makes me anxious, or I feel rushed. Naming dissolves the spell. Keep a short log of messages that made you act against your judgment. Patterns appear quickly on paper. Respond with clarity and short boundaries. A simple, "I'll get back to you tomorrow," or "I can't do that," removes ambiguity and reclaims time. Practice neutral replies that refuse derailment without escalating drama. Teach close contacts how you like to be messaged. Small social contracts reduce the power of micro-manipulation. Text is a useful tool. It can hold care across distance and time. But when small messages are used to push, to test, or to trap, they become instruments of control. Learn to read the rhythm as well as the words, and you will keep your attention where it belongs, with your own steady voice. Chapter 10. The Parasocial Manipulator. Influencers, gurus, and online microcults. You feel like you know them, and in some ways you do, but only the parts they choose to show. The bond is real, your feelings are real, yet the person on the screen may never know your name. Parasocial relationships are invisible strings that tie your attention and emotion to someone who cannot reciprocate in meaningful ways. An influencer smiles at you through the lens. A guru promises clarity. A digital micro-cult offers belonging. Your mind fills the gaps between what you see and what you imagine, creating intimacy without interaction. That intimacy feels personal, and the more you give of yourself, your attention, your time, your belief, the deeper the influence grows. Manipulative content is crafted to pull you in without your noticing. Videos, posts, podcasts, and streams use hooks that spark curiosity, guilt, or excitement. A sudden story arc, a confession, or a subtle promise of status triggers emotional responses that mimic real-life interaction. Likes and comments create a sense of participation and approval, even when the relationship is one-sided. You begin to anticipate their words, respond emotionally, and even alter your behavior to match what you perceive they value. The architecture of influence is invisible, yet it bends behavior as surely as a whispered suggestion in the ear of a friend. Digital charisma is a strange power. It combines timing, tone, visual framing, and narrative rhythm to create a persona that feels both authentic and magnetic. You sense warmth, wisdom, and trustworthiness because the content is engineered to simulate presence. That presence can motivate, inspire, or teach, but it can also manipulate. Promises of belonging, knowledge, or transformation can mask pressure, bias, or commercial intent. The more consistent the emotional loop, the more likely you are to comply with requests, click links, buy products, or adopt beliefs that you might have questioned in a personal, face-to-face exchange. Awareness is the first line of defense. Recognize when your feelings are being directed toward a curated persona rather than a real person. Notice when content is engineered to provoke urgency, excitement, or fear. Pause before acting on advice or requests that arrive through parasocial channels. Compare your responses to offline reality. Would the same thing feel reasonable from a friend, a colleague, or a mentor you could meet? Reflection disrupts the automatic loops that digital charisma relies on. Boundaries can be maintained even in the presence of compelling content. Limit exposure, diversify sources, and consciously choose when and how you engage. Keep personal reflection separate from consumption. Do not let algorithms and curated personalities substitute for real human connection. Share insights with friends or communities grounded in mutual care and accountability. Step back to see the mechanics of attraction and you reclaim control over attention, emotion, and belief. Parasocial manipulators thrive on invisibility, but light diminishes the unseen. Your awareness transforms fascination into choice. When you understand how these emotional and digital currents work, you can engage without surrendering, learn without being steered, and admire without being borrowed. In that clarity, admiration remains a gift, not a leash. Chapter 11. Early Detection. The Red Flags of Stealth Manipulators. Something in the room feels heavier than it should. A glance, a word, a pause. Your gut tightens before your mind can name the reason. That feeling is often the first warning. Stealth manipulators rarely announce themselves. Their moves are small, almost imperceptible, like the slow tightening of a net. They build patterns, not dramatic events, and the danger lies in repetition. Micro-patterns appear in tone, in phrasing, in timing. Tiny shifts that erode autonomy without setting off alarms. A question that becomes a subtle suggestion. A compliment that carries expectation. A delay in response that makes you anxious to reply. These are the breadcrumbs of influence, and noticing them early can make the difference between control and freedom. Normal influence is familiar. It respects boundaries and leaves space for choice. A friend convinces you to try a new hobby because they care. A mentor nudges you toward a challenge because it benefits growth. Stealth manipulation is engineered. It nudges repeatedly, exploits weaknesses, and tests limits to see where resistance collapses. The difference is subtle. You may feel an invisible tug in one moment and brush it off, but over weeks or months, these tugs accumulate into a pattern that shapes behavior quietly and effectively. The psychology behind the feeling off sensation is simple but profound. Your subconscious notices inconsistencies long before your conscious mind does. You register a mismatch in tone, a mismatch in logic, or a mismatch in intent. Your brain flags it as an anomaly, a warning. Yet because the manipulator's moves are small and socially plausible, your conscious mind dismisses it, telling itself, maybe I'm overthinking. That dismissal is exactly what makes the method effective. The body knows before the mind catches up, and learning to trust those subtle signals is a skill that grows with attention and reflection. Early detection begins with observation. Track repeated behaviors that make you feel anxious, indebted, or unusually responsible for someone else's mood. Notice when actions or words provoke confusion, guilt, or hesitation in ways that seem patterned rather than situational. Compare interactions over time. Patterns emerge when small anomalies repeat with intention. You do not need confrontation at first. Awareness itself is a shield. Keeping a mental or written note of feeling off moments sharpens intuition and allows you to respond before influence solidifies. Boundaries are best reinforced gradually. Trust your instincts. Ask for clarification. Pause before agreeing or complying. Test reactions with small refusals. Observe responses without judgment. Over time, patterns will reveal themselves, and you will see who nudges gently because they care, and who nudges persistently because they aim to control. Early detection is not paranoia. It is the cultivation of inner clarity, a quiet armor that protects autonomy while allowing genuine connection. Recognize the red flags, and you reclaim the power to choose before anyone else writes the script for your life. Chapter 12. Situational Awareness. Reading context like a psychologist. The room speaks before anyone utters a word. Every gesture, pause, and glance carries information about power, intention, and unspoken rules. If you learn to read it, you can navigate unseen currents. If not, you may be carried where you never meant to go. Situational awareness is more than noticing what happens. It is understanding what lies beneath. In workplaces, relationships, and friendships, subtle power dynamics shape behavior. Who interrupts whom? Who gets eye contact? Who is ignored? Who smiles while withholding truth? And who speaks softly to make a suggestion feel like a command? These are signals, and a trained eye or even a trained mind can map the invisible lines of influence. Noticing them is not paranoia. It is the careful study of context, the ability to see the pressure points that guide action. Hidden agendas rarely announce themselves. They drift in whispers, suggestions, and small favors tested over time. A colleague may frame a decision as a shared choice, but subtly steer it to personal gain. A friend may offer help while creating dependence. A partner may express concern that masks control. By observing repeated patterns and understanding intentions behind words and actions, you can start to see the architecture of influence, the framework of who benefits, who guides, and who persuades. Mapping these agendas requires patience and clarity. It is not about suspicion for its own sake, but about awareness to act consciously. High-stress situations magnify these dynamics. Pressure amplifies vulnerability and reveals hidden intent. A sudden crisis, a deadline, or a personal emergency can trigger automatic compliance. Manipulators exploit these moments because decisions made under tension are less reflective, more reactive. By watching how people act under stress, who remains calm, who nudges others, who seeks to dominate, you can discern patterns invisible during ordinary time. Stress acts like a filter, showing motives in sharper relief. Developing situational awareness begins with observation and reflection. Notice not only what is said, but how it is said, and what is left unsaid. Track patterns across time and context. Ask yourself, who benefits from this moment? Who gains influence, and who seems constrained? Small mental notes accumulate into a map, revealing currents that guide behavior often unnoticed. Awareness also demands emotional regulation. Sharp perception requires a mind that is steady, not reactive. Awareness is not control over others. It is control over yourself. By reading context like a psychologist, you step back from automatic reactions, see potential influence, and choose your actions consciously. You learn when to engage, when to pause, and when to walk away. You protect your attention, your judgment, and your autonomy. In mastering situational awareness, you do not simply survive interactions. You navigate them with intention, understanding, and clarity. The room speaks. Learn to listen, and you will hear everything. Chapter 13. Emotional Mapping. Decode what they're really trying to make you feel. Feelings are rarely innocent. They arrive with a message, a direction, or a hidden hand guiding them. Sometimes the emotion is yours. Sometimes it is borrowed, planted, or borrowed to bend you. Emotional mapping begins with noticing the mismatch between what you feel and what actually happens. A small comment that triggers disproportionate guilt. A casual suggestion that sparks fear. A minor omission that makes you feel obligated. These are hints that someone else is trying to steer your emotional state. Humans are wired to respond to emotions quickly, before reason catches up. That wiring is a doorway into influence. Manipulators understand it. They do not always seek to command your mind. Often, it is enough to redirect your feeling, to create an inner landscape where their choices seem logical or unavoidable. Engineered guilt is a quiet tactic. A delayed thank you, a subtle critique, or a reminder of past favors can make you feel indebted, even when the balance of exchange is fair. Fear is used similarly but differently. It may be the fear of losing approval, safety, or belonging. Obligation can appear as concern disguised as necessity. Each of these shifts is small, almost imperceptible yet repeated. They create a map of emotional dependence. By tracing when and why these feelings arise, you begin to see the invisible lines connecting action to reaction, comment to compulsion. Detecting these currents requires patience. Observe patterns rather than isolated events. Ask yourself, does my feeling match the reality of the situation? Am I reacting to what was said, or to what the timing, tone, or implication suggests I should feel? Pay attention to moments when your body reacts faster than your reasoning can follow. Your heart races, your stomach tightens, your chest constricts. These somatic clues are the body's early warning system, the subconscious recognizing influence before conscious consent occurs. Practicing emotional mapping also means naming your feelings. Say to yourself, "This is guilt," or "I feel pressured." Labeling separates the emotion from automatic compliance. It illuminates whether the feeling arises from circumstance or subtle direction. Over time, this awareness creates a mental map where you can track emotional triggers, see the manipulator's influence, and anticipate attempts at redirection. Emotions are tools, not traps. They guide, warn, inspire, and connect. But when someone else engineers them to bend your behavior, awareness becomes a shield. By mapping emotional currents, you reclaim choice, step out of invisible scripts, and understand what is truly yours and what has been placed to move you. Once you see the map, you decide where to walk, when to pause, and when to set firm boundaries. The world will still move around you, but your path is yours to chart. Chapter 14. Mental Firewalls, Protecting Your Cognitive Boundaries. Your mind is a landscape, and some visitors arrive uninvited. Ideas, suggestions, and subtle nudges slip past your attention when you are distracted, tired, or trusting. Without a mental firewall, even small intrusions accumulate, shaping thoughts, feelings, and decisions that feel like your own but are not. Cognitive boundaries are not walls against learning or empathy. They are the invisible limits that protect your agency. The first step in creating them is awareness. Notice when a thought arises abruptly, when a suggestion lodges in your mind before you consciously invite it, or when an idea sparks discomfort or urgency without clear cause. That is the moment to pause. Thought interruption is simple but powerful. A single deep breath, a question to yourself, or even a mental note saying, "This is their suggestion, not mine," can stop the automatic chain reaction. The brain often follows momentum. Halting the first step interrupts the sequence before influence takes root. Emotional grounding is the companion to thought interruption. Feelings are powerful levers. A manipulator relies on emotional sway to bypass reason. By anchoring yourself through slow breathing, noticing your surroundings, or mentally labeling emotions, you return control to your conscious mind. Fear, guilt, or excitement may still arise, but you can observe them instead of reacting automatically. Grounding is not denial, it is presence. It is claiming the space where you decide how a feeling informs your choice, rather than letting it dictate action. Patterns are the manipulator's tools. Repetition, timing, and subtle escalation create expectation and compliance. Recognizing patterns allows you to disrupt them. Change the context, delay responses, or respond neutrally instead of predictably. Interrupt their rhythm, and the influence weakens. Small acts, pausing before answering, asking questions that require clarification, or simply acknowledging a suggestion without immediate agreement. Create distance. Distance gives clarity. Clarity is protection. A mental firewall is built over time. It is reinforced each time you notice intrusion, pause, and reclaim choice. It is strengthened with reflection, journaling, and conscious self-dialogue. It does not block curiosity, learning, or connection. Instead, it separates your mind from subtle manipulation, allowing engagement on your own terms. When thoughts and emotions return to you with transparency, you can consider them fully, decide freely, and respond intentionally. Protecting cognitive boundaries is not about isolating yourself. It is about sovereignty over your mind. Awareness, interruption, grounding, and pattern recognition form the framework. Within this framework, you are not at the mercy of invisible hands or quiet nudges. You can observe influence without surrendering to it, respond without compulsion, and preserve autonomy while remaining open to the world. The firewall is not a barrier against life. It is a shield for thought, a tool to navigate invisible currents with clarity and the quiet knowledge that your mind belongs first to you. Chapter 15. Communication countermeasures. Words are more than tools. They are weapons and shields. The right phrase can open a door, but the wrong one can close it, redirect your mind, or plant subtle pressure before you even notice. Communication is a battlefield, and awareness is your first line of defense. A verbal shield begins with clarity and intention. It is a phrase, a pause, or a gentle refusal that signals boundaries without aggression. "I'll consider that. Let me think about it." Or "I'm not comfortable deciding right now," are not weak statements. They are markers that your mind remains yours. When subtle pressure builds, the shield interrupts the pattern. It stops the manipulator's rhythm and forces a pause in the unseen game. Even short sentences, delivered calmly and without apology, can dismantle influence instantly because they create space for your reasoning to catch up to the emotional tug. Boundary-setting scripts take the shield one step further. They are ready-made lines for situations where manipulation lurks beneath politeness. "I can't do that. That doesn't work for me." Or "I'm choosing differently" are simple words, but repeated with consistency, they teach others that subtle nudges will not bypass your awareness. The power is in repetition and calmness. A strong boundary is not defended with emotion, but with quiet certainty. Each repetition reinforces the unspoken rule: your decisions belong to you. Neutralizing subtle pressure often requires timing and posture as much as words. A pause before responding, a steady tone, and maintaining composure amplify the effect of your verbal shield. Manipulators rely on urgency and reflexive compliance. When you slow down, name the feeling, and respond deliberately, you collapse the invisible leverage. Silence is also a tool. A calm, unhurried silence in the face of suggestion often unsettles the subtle influencer, breaking the momentum of their strategy. Practice makes these countermeasures automatic. Start small. Interrupt micro-pressure in casual conversations. Notice when someone frames a request to make you feel guilty or anxious, and respond with a prepared script instead of a reflexive answer. Reflect afterward on how it felt, what worked, and what can be strengthened. Over time, you build an internal repertoire of shields, scripts, and strategies that protect not only your choices, but your attention and emotional energy. Communication countermeasures are not about confrontation. They are about sovereignty. They allow you to engage without surrendering, to listen without compliance, and to respond with conscious choice rather than reaction. Every word you say or withhold becomes part of your firewall, your quiet power in the invisible currents of influence. When mastered, you can navigate conversation like a skilled strategist, aware of pressure, impervious to manipulation, and always anchored in your own authority. The mind that speaks with clarity rarely yields to unseen hands. It listens, it chooses, and it remains free. Chapter 16. Psychological Immunity. Becoming Manipulation Resistant. Influence is everywhere, invisible and insidious, like a current under calm water. Most drift without noticing. A few learn to swim against it, to move freely without being pulled. Psychological immunity is that freedom. It is not about controlling others. It is about controlling yourself. Self-awareness is the foundation. To resist manipulation, you must first understand your own mind, your triggers, your desires, and your weak points. Notice what emotions arise when someone speaks, gestures, or suggests. Ask yourself why a comment unsettles you, or why a compliment feels like a demand. When you name these reactions, you shine a light on the parts of yourself that manipulators exploit. Awareness does not eliminate feeling, it reframes it. You no longer react blindly, but with clarity. Emotional vulnerabilities are the gateways to influence. Guilt, fear, desire for approval, or a need for belonging can all be used as levers. Reducing susceptibility begins with honesty, acknowledging what makes you human without shame. Practice grounding techniques. Breathe deeply, observe your surroundings, or remind yourself that feelings are not commands. By observing emotion rather than obeying it automatically, you create a buffer. That buffer allows choice where once there was reflex. Manipulators rely on rushed reactions, but when your mind pauses, their leverage dissolves. Resilience grows through experience and reflection. High-pressure environments reveal both character and susceptibility. Stress magnifies small nudges into compulsion, but those who cultivate mental resilience learn to hold space for reason amidst chaos. Small daily exercises, deliberate pauses, reflection on past interactions, role-playing potential scenarios strengthen this skill. Over time, the mind becomes like a fortress, adaptable, alert, and unshakable in the face of subtle influence. Immunity does not mean isolation. Awareness, groundedness, and resilience allow you to engage with the world without surrendering your autonomy. You can care, collaborate, and connect while remaining firmly anchored in your own mind. Observing manipulation without absorbing it is a subtle art. It is a quiet vigilance, not a reactive tension. Like a skilled navigator reading hidden currents, you move freely, choosing when to adjust, when to resist, and when to withdraw. The paradox of psychological immunity is simple yet profound. The more aware and anchored you become, the less others can control you, but the freer you also are to trust, to empathize, and to act authentically. Each small habit, each mindful reflection, each moment of deliberate pause strengthens your internal shield. The currents of influence still exist, but they no longer determine your course. You chart your own path. You decide what to believe, what to feel, and how to act. In that quiet mastery, you achieve true freedom, a mind resilient, clear, and impervious to invisible hands. Chapter 17. Reclaiming your autonomy. Freedom is quiet. It does not announce itself with fanfare, but when it is taken, the absence of control is palpable. Many live under invisible hands, their thoughts guided, emotions nudged, decisions influenced, and yet they do not realize the chains are there. Reclaiming autonomy is noticing those chains and choosing deliberately to step beyond them. The first step is observation. Pay attention to your thoughts and feelings. Ask yourself where they originate. Did this opinion arise from your own reflection, or has it been whispered into your mind by another's subtle influence? Did this emotion surface naturally, or was it carefully stirred by a look, a word, a pause? Awareness is the lens through which manipulation becomes visible. Without it, control flows like water beneath your feet, unseen and unstoppable. With it, the tides slow and you see the currents shaping your path. Taking back your emotions requires patience. Emotions can be powerful levers, and manipulators often exploit them without your conscious permission. Naming feelings, acknowledging them without judgment, and pausing before acting creates space. That space is autonomy. In that quiet interval, you are not compelled to respond in ways dictated by external influence. You can choose to feel without surrendering action, to observe without being carried away, and to protect your inner landscape from subtle intrusion. Decisions are the final frontier. When your choices align with external agendas, autonomy is an illusion. To reclaim it, every choice, small or large, must be considered deliberately. Ask yourself, what do I want? What aligns with my values? What feels true in my mind and body, not just in response to others' expectations? Each decision made consciously reinforces sovereignty, strengthens the mind against manipulation, and gradually builds immunity to the invisible currents that seek to pull you off course. Becoming immune to stealth control is a lifelong practice, not a single achievement. It requires reflection, patience, and consistency. Boundaries must be set and maintained. Thought interruption and emotional grounding become habits. Communication countermeasures are deployed naturally. Each moment of deliberate choice trains the mind to resist influence and to honor personal integrity. Gradually, the invisible hands lose their grip, and the mind learns to navigate the world freely, with clarity and intention. Autonomy is more than freedom from control. It is the power to engage with the world authentically. It allows empathy without exploitation, connection without dependence, and influence without surrender. The paradox is simple. The more you reclaim, the more fully you participate in life. Each thought, each feeling, each decision becomes yours again, chosen consciously rather than absorbed unconsciously. Reclaiming autonomy is quiet, subtle, and profound. It is the ultimate act of self-respect, knowing that while the world may try to guide you, your mind, heart, and choices remain entirely your own. Chapter 18. Ethical Influence. Using psychology without harming others. Influence is not inherently dark. It becomes dangerous only when wielded to bend others without their awareness, when their choices are quietly replaced by someone else's agenda. The line between persuasion and exploitation is thinner than most realize, and crossing it can happen in a whisper. Ethical influence, however, respects boundaries, honors autonomy, and builds connection instead of control. True persuasion begins with clarity and honesty. It does not rely on hidden triggers, guilt, or fear. Instead, it presents ideas transparently, inviting others to choose freely. When you understand human psychology, you can guide conversations, frame options, and communicate persuasively. But the goal is mutual benefit, not subtle domination. Influence with integrity means recognizing that the other mind is not a tool, but a partner in decision-making. It is the difference between suggesting a path and quietly steering someone down one they might not have chosen otherwise. Every interaction carries potential for subtle sway. A smile, a well-timed word, a tone of encouragement. These all influence, and yet they can be used ethically. Ethical influence uses understanding to enhance communication, foster collaboration, and create environments where people feel empowered rather than manipulated. It is the art of aligning interests without overriding autonomy, of planting ideas that inspire thought without coercion, of encouraging reflection instead of compliance. Building mutually beneficial interactions requires awareness and empathy. Consider the other person's perspective. What do they need? What motivates them? What fears or desires might influence their response? By observing and respecting these factors, influence becomes a shared experience. Decisions arise not from hidden pressure, but from informed choice. Boundaries are maintained, trust is preserved, and relationships deepen, because influence is transparent and accountable. Ethical influence is also self-protective. When you operate with integrity, you avoid the moral and emotional costs of manipulation. Exploiting others creates tension, guilt, and dependency. Acting transparently cultivates confidence, trust, and sustainable connections. You may still face manipulators, invisible pressures, and subtle nudges from others. But by mastering ethical influence, you create a framework of clarity, fairness, and resilience that shields your own mind while engaging meaningfully with the world. The paradox is simple. Influence is a tool that can harm or heal, manipulate or empower. The choice lies in awareness, intention, and respect for autonomy. By using psychology ethically, you participate consciously in the flow of interaction rather than surrendering to unseen currents. Persuasion with integrity becomes a quiet power, a force that shapes decisions while honoring freedom, a skill that connects rather than controls, and a practice that strengthens relationships instead of eroding them. Influence is inevitable. Ethical influence is a choice, and that choice defines the difference between mastery and manipulation. Conclusion: awareness is your freedom. The most dangerous chains are invisible. They wrap around your thoughts, your emotions, your decisions, and you never see them. Most people live their lives unaware, guided by currents they cannot feel, nudged by hands they cannot see. Awareness is the key to breaking those chains. Once you notice the forces at work, the currents lose their grip, and the mind begins to breathe freely. Freedom begins with understanding yourself, your triggers, your desires, your fears. They are the doorways that influence seeks to pass through. When you know them, you recognize the subtle patterns of manipulation before they take root. Every thought you examine, every feeling you question, every impulse you pause to reflect upon strengthens your autonomy. Awareness is not a shield you hold once. It is a daily practice, a way of living that keeps you conscious in a world designed to move you unconsciously. Living with clarity means observing without surrendering, noticing invisible pressure, hidden agendas or emotional nudges does not require cynicism. It requires attention. It requires a calm mind that can see influence and still choose its own path. Each interaction becomes an opportunity to exercise freedom, to respond deliberately rather than react automatically, to feel deeply without being compelled, to decide consciously without the quiet sway of another's will. The more you practice, the more resilient your mind becomes. The final step is integration. Carry the lessons of observation, emotional grounding, boundary setting, and ethical engagement into everyday life. Let them inform your decisions, your relationships, and your understanding of the world. Recognize that influence is inevitable, that persuasion surrounds you, and that subtle manipulation will always exist. But also know that your mind is yours first, that awareness can illuminate every shadow, and that conscious choice is the ultimate safeguard. To live with freedom, remember a simple checklist. Pause before responding, name your emotions, question sudden urges, set clear boundaries, reflect on recurring patterns, and engage ethically with others. Each act of mindfulness reinforces your autonomy. Each moment of reflection weakens the grip of invisible currents. Over time, these practices become habits. And habits become a mindset, a lens through which the world is seen clearly and through which your mind moves freely. Awareness is not just knowledge, it is power, clarity, and liberation. It is the ability to navigate relationships, environments, and ideas without surrendering your agency. The invisible hands will still exist, but they no longer direct your course. You see them, you understand them, and you choose. In that choice lies your freedom, the quiet mastery of your mind, and the profound truth that the greatest control begins with awareness. To be awake in a world designed to pull you unconsciously is the truest form of liberation. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to Audiobook Vision. Click the like button to keep this work alive. Share it with someone you care about, and tell me in the comments what your favorite part of the video was. Thank you. See you next.